After the wedding, my daughter-in-law showed up at my door with a notary. "We've just sold this house. You're going to a nursing home." I said, "Perfect. Let's stop at the police station first. They're very interested in what I sent them about you. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you." If I fumble today, I lose the roof over my head and the right to call my life my own. The notary stood in my living room like a lamppost in a storm. Unmoved, raincoat slick with early drizzle, clipboard clamped to his chest. Sabrina smiled beside him, polite as a flight attendant while my future taxied toward a cliff. "Evelyn," she said, sugar-sweet, "this is Ken. We just need a few signatures to get your care squared away." "Perfect," I said, and matched her brightness. "But let's make a quick stop at the county sheriff's office afterward. They've been waiting to hear about certain documents. I promised them an update." Color leaked from her face. Ken's pen paused over the first page. I kept smiling. "Coffee?" I asked, already pouring. My hands barely trembled. I'd been a mother for 42 years. I knew an ambush when I smelled one. Printer, ink, cologne, and the antiseptic tang of a fresh notary stamp. 2 days earlier, I'd watched my only son, Mark, say, "I do," in the same old church where his father and I had exchanged vows before life's bills, shifts, and midnight feedings taught us what a promise costs. The reception had been at the country club, the one where I'd waited tables for half a decade to push Mark through school. I'd scraped $15,000 together for that wedding and their down payment. Couponing groceries, walking to save on gas, buying cereal that turned to dust in the bowl. When the toasts came, Mark thanked me like a good son. Then Sabrina took the mic, her dress white as a dentist's smile, and announced to the room that I'd been living with us and helping financially, because that's what mothers do. The women at her table gave me those sideways, pitying looks. In one speech, she recast my sacrifice as codependency and my gift as proof I couldn't let go. It was humiliating, cruel even, but humiliation is a funny teacher. It points to the exit sign. The morning after the wedding, Sabrina brought a stranger into my kitchen with a briefcase and a stack of papers thick enough to wedge a door. Mark, she claimed, was at the gym. Ken introduced himself as a mobile notary. Sabrina called the papers care agreements, assisted living arrangements, and my favorite, cleaner paperwork. Cleaner, meaning my name scrubbed off a deed I'd financed, replaced with my promise to move into Sunrise Harbor assisted living with costs covered for the first year. 1 year. Then what? "We'll cross that bridge," she said, like we weren't already halfway across it with the planks missing. I didn't sign that day. I smiled, thanked Ken for his time, and said I needed to think. Sabrina's eyes hardened. She liked compliant women and soft lines. I am many things, but soft in the places that count isn't one. I made blueberry pancakes the next morning, habit from when Mark was 5 and still believed houses were magic, not mortgages. Sabrina drifted in wearing silk pajamas you could hear whisper. "Smells amazing," she said, sitting like a queen receiving tribute. "Have you had time to think? Ken can come back at 2. "I've been thinking," I said, "but I'm confused. What exactly happened that made you decide I needed assisted living?" "It's not one thing," she replied, fork glinting. "It's an overall vulnerability, safety, structure, people your own age." People my own age. As if a number on a birthday cake erased 42 years of paying bills on time, driving at night, and keeping the pilot light of a household from going out. So, no falls? No stove left on? No medication mix-ups? I asked. Her smile thinned. "Evelyn, you're almost 70. We're being proactive." "I'm 68, I said. "Proactive is me scheduling my own flu shot and balancing my checkbook. Proactive isn't you erasing my name from property I helped buy." Her fork clicked against porcelain. "You gave us that money," she snapped. "You can't give a gift and then chase it around forever with questions?" I opened the drawer and pulled a small spiral notebook I'd been keeping. March 15th, I read. You told Mark I left the stove on. I made toast that day. No stove. Flip. March 22nd, you said I forgot our dinner plans. We never had them. You'd canceled that morning. Flip. April 3rd, you whispered, then said I couldn't follow a conversation. I asked you to speak up. I looked up. You've been building a case, honey, not for my safety, for my incompetence. It was the first time that week her eyes showed me the person under the polish, calculating, cold, skin-deep kind. You're paranoid, she said softly, and it scares me for you. Being patronized scares me for you, I said back, because I write things down. A payment reminder buzzed my phone, past due, bright red. My allowance for her bookkeeping convenience had been paused, which meant the automatic payment I used for utilities had failed. A $29 late fee is not abstract, it's a bruise on a fixed income. I slid the alert away, pocket buzz burning like a coal. Tangible. Consequence. Check. I'll consider assisted living, I said, with one condition. The house stays in both names until the loan is repaid. My security is not negotiable. That's not how the paperwork is drawn, she said. Cleaner to move it fully to us. Cleaner for whom? She stared at my notebook. Something ruthless moved behind her face, then surfaced. You know what your problem is. You can't let go of Mark. You've made him feel responsible for your loneliness for years. Now you're doing it again. Truth sliced thin can still cut. Grief for the years after my husband died flickered through me. Nights too quiet, a son I kept too close because the world was loud. But confession is not consent. Even if I've clung too hard, I said, that doesn't make fraud a love language. Her voice lost its honey. You have 24 hours to sign, she hissed, or I'll tell Mark about the pills. What pills? The Xanax I found in your purse, not prescribed to you. Ice crawled over my scalp. A neighbor had asked me to pick up a prescription the week before she moved states. The bag had sunk under my wallet, forgotten in the churn of wedding errands. They're not mine, I said. I was doing a favor. Can you prove that? Sabrina asked, smile sharp enough to draw blood. Because from where the world sits, it looks like an old woman with confusion and a drug problem. Guardianship courts take that very seriously. There it was, the reversal, clean as a trap, snapping shut. My plan to stall and outweight her needed a pivot, immediately. 2 o'clock is fine, I said. Ken can come back. I stacked our plates, rinsed, wiped the table with slow care. When she left for her post-wedding manicure, the social maintenance of predators, I pulled a fireproof box from the back of my closet. The one she'd once suggested would be safer in their bedroom. A tidy place is useful. I always know when something's been moved. Nothing had. My documents waited. Photocopies, originals, a deed with 2 names, a signed loan agreement, and something I'd insisted on months ago when Mark, flustered and apologetic, asked me to sign a power of attorney, just in case. Just in case is a phrase I trust, like I trust rattlesnakes. I had my lawyer draft a conditional clause. Any authority would spring only upon 2 independent physicians declaring me incompetent. 2 signatures in writing, otherwise nil. I put the papers in a manila folder, made 3 sets, and zipped them into my purse. Then I dialed my clinic. Dr. Brooks, I asked the front desk, I need a same-day appointment for a competency check and a letter stating current mental status. The doctor can squeeze you at 11, the receptionist said. 10-minute gap. I'll bring muffins, I said, grabbed a sweater and left the house I'd helped buy. At the clinic, Dr. Lila Brooks, 12 years of care, no-nonsense cardigans, ran me through memory, orientation, attention. I'm assuming this isn't about crossword bragging rights, she said. Someone's trying to shorten my life with paperwork, I said. I need armor that reads like medicine. She typed, printed, signed. The letter was clear. Fully oriented, no cognitive decline, capable of managing affairs. I hugged her, muffins and all. From the parking lot, I called the county sheriff's office and asked for the detective who'd given a community talk on fraud last spring. "Detective Alvarez," a voice said. "Detective, this is Evelyn Hart. I'm concerned about potential financial exploitation. There may be coercion. I have a paper trail." He listened, asked careful questions, and told me exactly what evidence to save. Emails, texts, banknotes, copies of anything I had signed or refused to sign. If someone shows up at your house asking you to sign away property, do not do it, he said. If they use delay tactics, document it. If they threaten you with guardianship, write down the exact words. 2:00, I said. A mobile notary is coming. I'll put this on the board, he said. If anything escalates, call 911. Otherwise, collect, record, and don't be alone if you can help it. I was alone, but I am rarely outnumbered. On my way home, I stopped at the pharmacy. Last week, I told the manager, I picked up a neighbor's prescription. She moved and forgot to pick it up from me before leaving. I need to return it. He scanned the bag's barcode, nodded, and handed me a small slip showing the return. Keep this, he said. It's proof if anyone asks. I slid the slip into my folder with the doctor's letter and the copies of my deed and loan agreement. Then I went home to wait. Sabrina breezed in at 1:15 with a paper cup of something foamed and a smile lacquered back into place. Ken will be here at 2, she said. Lovely, I replied, brewing a fresh pot of coffee and setting 3 cups on coasters. I'd crocheted in a past life when my hands weren't busy defending everything they'd built. My phone buzzed again, a past due alert, same red banner, reminder that while Sabrina tried to erase me from paper, late fees were trying to erase me from my budget. At 1:45, Ken Draper arrived. He set his clipboard on the table like an altar and slid a neat stack of documents toward me. We're moving you to Sunrise Harbor Assisted Living, he said in a tone people use on toddlers and golden retrievers. Everything will be easier. For whom? I asked again. Sabrina shot him a look. He cleared his throat. I just need to verify your ID and watch your signatures. I placed my driver's license on the table. Then I placed my manila folder beside it and opened it like a dealer cutting a deck. Before we sign anything, I said pleasantly, a few housekeeping items. I slid him the deed copy with 2 names. Deed copy. He read, glanced at the title line, then at Sabrina. Here's the signed loan agreement for the down payment, I said, laying it on top. Repayment terms circled. Ken's brows knotted. He looked less like a lamppost and more like a man realizing his umbrella had holes. And this, I said, tapping the conditional power of attorney with its clause in 12-point font, void until 2 independent physicians say otherwise. I have not one, but 0 physicians who say otherwise. In fact, I have the opposite. I handed him Dr. Brooks's letter. He read in a silence you could stack plates on. Sabrina's smile didn't crack this time. It shattered. Evelyn, she said, voice flat, you're making a scene. In my own living room? I asked. Just wait. My favorite card is next. I produced the pharmacy slip and laid it with the others. Those pills you found in my purse? Returned. Barcoded proof. I don't misuse medication. I do keep receipts. Ken swallowed. Missy. Hart. I was told. You were told I was confused, I said. You were told to rush me. You were told to skip the part where you ask what I want. I leaned back. Mr. Draper, financial exploitation of an older adult is a felony. The county sheriff's office is well versed. If you knowingly assist in pressuring me to sign under false pretenses, you'll want your liability insurance to be robust. Do you have a supervisor you'd like to call? He closed his notebook. I think I need to step outside for a moment. Sabrina grabbed his sleeve. Ken, don't. He was already halfway to the door. We sat in the quiet that follows a thunderclap. The house smelled like coffee and fresh paper. My heart beat against my sternum like a boxer working a bag. Steady. Focused. Sabrina fixed her gaze on me. "You don't understand the position we're in," she said finally. "The wedding, the mortgage, the baby." "Then sell the car with the bow still on it," I said. "Cancel the trip. Stop spending my future to fund yours." She blinked. Tears gathered. The practiced kind. "We only wanted security." "So did I said. "That's why my name went on the deed." Ken returned, face pale. "I can't proceed today," he said to Sabrina, not to me. "You'll need legal counsel, probably." "You are legal counsel," she snapped. "I notarize," he said gently. "I don't advise, and I don't notarize people who say they don't consent." He looked at me. "Miss Hart, I'm sorry for the intrusion." "Accepted," I said. "Drive safely." When the door clicked behind him, Sabrina's tears vanished like someone hit a switch. "You think you've won," she said. "I think I'm done being polite," I said. "You have a choice. Honor the signed loan agreement and keep the deed as is, or we let the county sheriff's office help us all understand the word felony." She laughed, a sharp, bright bark. "You'd turn your own son's life upside down." "My son did that when he sent you to do his talking," I said evenly. "If he wants to speak to me, he can knock on my door like a man." I slid my folder closed and stood. 2:00, you said. It's 2:10 now. I have calls to return." She didn't move. "He'll choose me," she said so quietly I almost didn't catch it. "He always will." "In matters of love?" I said. "He should. In matters of crime? He'd better not." Outside, the drizzle had turned to honest rain. I cracked a window and let the clean smell in. I'd kept my promise to myself for the day. I hadn't fumbled. Not my roof, not my rights, not my name. I set 3 cups back in the cupboard, wiped the ring off the table, and dialed Detective Alvarez to log the interaction as he'd asked. Times, threats, attempted coercion, presence of a notary, and my refusal. Then I called Dr. Brooks's office to thank them again. Armor doesn't look like steel when you're my age. It looks like a file folder that opens to letters, receipts, and a spine. By sundown, I'd packed a small duffel and put it by the door. Not because I was running. Because when people show you they'll shove you to the edge and call it caregiving, you stop sleeping without a parachute. Tomorrow I'd make new plans. Tonight, the house I'd helped buy still held me. I locked the front door, turned off the kitchen light, and stood a minute longer in the dark, listening to rain on the roof I still owned. The leasing agent slid a ring of keys across a laminate desk that had seen 100 other lives begin. I signed my name 3 times, initialed twice, and the pen left a faint groove under my fingers like a line drawn through a map. Here, then here. "It's not fancy," the agent said, apologizing for something I'd chosen with my eyes open. "But the elevator's new and the radiators actually work." "Heat and an elevator," I said. "That's better than love most winters." He laughed politely. I paid the deposit with my own card and watched the receipt print like proof the ground would hold. Sabrina liked to say, "We'll handle it," which is code for, "We'll hold it over you." From now on, if it had my name on it, it would have my money under it. On the way back to the house, I picked up a roll of packing tape, a $10 dolly, and a sleeve of black markers. Financial freedom has a smell. Cardboard, ink, the faint metal tang from a new key. I didn't announce the move. Announcements invite sabotage dressed as concern. Instead, I texted Mark, "Lunch today? Your choice." He read it within a minute. The typing dots blinked, disappeared, returned. Can't busy. Sabrina's mom coming over, rain check. Rain checks, my husband used to say, are IOUs from people who don't intend to pay. I looked out at the actual rain. I loaded the first box. I began with the essentials. File box, toiletries, 3 days of clothes, the pressure cooker, the blue bowl with the chip that catches the afternoon light, I wrapped my teacups in the church bulletin and marked each box in block letters that felt like they could be read from the moon. Kitchen, Evelyn. Linens, Evelyn. Books, heavy, Evelyn. The name mattered. The name on the boxes. The name on the deed. The name on the mailbox in a building where the elevator actually worked. Sabrina came home in a gust of citrus and phone calls. She stood in the doorway and watched me tape a box labeled tools. What are you doing? Exactly what it looks like. You're being dramatic. I'm being mobile. She smiled without warmth. It isn't safe to live alone at your age. Luckily, I said, my doctor has a letter that says I can live alone at my age and yours. Her lips tightened. Mark will be upset. He had lunch free and didn't take it, I said. He can text me like an adult. She laughed the little tinkling laugh she saves for waiters and people she'd like to mistake as staff. You can't afford a place on your own, not with what you make. You'd be surprised what thrifty women save, I said, thinking of the antique envelope at the bottom of my fireproof box, the emergency money I'd added to a little every month since his father's funeral. Anyway, I had years of practice turning $1 into 2 meals. She lifted a box with my winter sweaters like a prop in a commercial about gracious help. Let me get this, she said to the hallway camera, which was not recording. Sabrina never helps for the person in front of her. I've got it, I said, and I'll take the vacuum. What about the housework? Hire it, I said, cleaner for you. You'll be back, she said. It's too much to manage. I'm 68, not a souffle, I said. I don't collapse if you look away. I made trips until my wrists trembled. Wrists, a dolly, a landing, a breath. The elevator hummed my boxes up like a barge lifting through a lock, patient and inevitable. In my new kitchen, the cabinet smelled like someone else's soap, and the counters showed the faint scratch marks of past owners learning where their knives belonged. I set the blue bowl on the sill. The light found it like it remembered. By late afternoon, I'd made 6 runs. On the 7th, a corner of the bookshelf bit my calf and left a crescent bruise that would bloom the color of a plum. The bruise felt honest. It said, "This costs." It said, "Pay it anyway." When I texted Mark the address, I kept it neutral. Dropping off a few boxes today. I signed a lease, new keys, I'm okay. The dots blinked again and again, but no reply came. Silence has a payload. It lands, leaves a crater, and you spend days walking around it. I called the utility companies from the floor, back against the wall, phone on speaker. New service, I said, and repeated my name to 4 different people who didn't know me. Auto pay, I added, from my account. I wrote down confirmation numbers until my palm was ink-smudged. When the representative offered to bundle my internet with television, I said no. Quiet would be cheaper, and I needed the noise inside my head to settle before I invited any more in. At dusk, I went back for the last trip of the day. The file box and the lamp from the living room that casts light like a pool you can step into. Sabrina stood in the hallway like a gate agent who decided the flight was full. We need to talk about the down payment, she said, her voice pitched in the register that travels through walls. We will, I said, in writing. That's not how families do it. Families who keep promises write them down. The rest call each other after dinner and hope no one is recording. She moved a shoulder, so I had to slide past her. You'll make Mark choose, she said. He already is, I said. Every day he doesn't knock on my door, he chooses. In the morning, I left the house key I'd used since closing day in a small dish by the door. I kept the spare. It had my name on it. Half the house did too. I took a picture of the lock, date, time, my thumb accidentally in the corner, and saved it to a folder I'd titled House Seat Evidence. The folder already had screenshots, the paused allowance, the late fee notice, the rhetoric about my safety that read like an alibi rehearsed ahead of time. Before I drove away, I walked through each room and spoke to them like old co-workers leaving a job. Thank you for sheltering us, I thought in the kitchen, where Mark had learned the value of a dish rack. Thank you for holding our laughter, I thought in the living room, where the rug still showed the dark oval spot where a Christmas tree had stood. And in the small guest room that had become my room by default and pressure, I said, thank you for telling the truth with your measurements. Not big enough for a life, just a cot. My apartment smelled like fresh paint and someone else's garlic. I sent Detective Alvarez a new list by email. Lease signed, utilities initiated, change of address forms filed, photos attached. Documented, he wrote back. Good moves. Keep logs of any communications that feel coercive. Separate finances fully if you haven't. I opened a new checking account at a credit union that still uses pens on chains and calls you by your last name, but does not lower its voice when you say you're opening the account to keep your daughter-in-law out of your budget. We see it more than you think, the teller said, sliding me a temporary debit card like a small, sturdy shield. I also froze my credit with all 3 bureaus on a public library computer because Sabrina is talented, and I don't need my future dinged by a department store sofa with easy payments. That night, in the squared light of my new windows, I called Mark. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Mom, my new place has an elevator, I said. No stoops to shovel. Silence. I could hear crowd noise in the background, the bright clink of glasses. We're at dinner with her folks, he said. Can I call you tomorrow? You missed lunch. I know. It's been a lot. I'm moving, I said. I'll send you the lease if you want to see it. I don't... Sabrina says you're making a mistake. You've said that about every good thing I've done for myself, I said quietly. Getting a job after your father died, selling 1 car, taking the smaller house so you could go to a college we couldn't pronounce. Mistakes, all of them, if you were to be believed. That's not fair. What's not fair is an ambush with a notary. He blew out a breath that fanned the coals of my patience. She thought wrong, I said, and you let her think for you. I don't, he said. But he didn't sound sure. Here are my boundaries, I said, not trusting myself to repeat them later without shaking. 1. The deed stays as it is until the loan is repaid, on schedule with receipts. 2. There are no visits to me without notice and consent. 3. You and I will speak directly, not through Sabrina, not through her mother. 4. If you try to make a guardianship case against me again, I will not protect you from its consequences. You'd do that to your own son? You're asking me if I'd stop you from stealing from me, I said. Listen to yourself. I'm not a thief. Then this will be easy, I said. Keep the agreement. Pay what you owe. Don't bring papers to my table unless they're honest. The crowd noise swelled at his end, someone's birthday song cutting through like a knife. He said, I'll call you tomorrow. He didn't. My neighbor across the hall introduced herself the next morning by sliding a plate of muffins through my doorway like a peace offering between countries. Patel, she said, pointing to her chest, 3rd floor, end unit. We share the laundry room. Beware the washer on the left. It eats socks. I brought muffins to my doctor last week, I said. They earned me a letter. You're new, she said, gently ignoring the letter part the way good neighbors do. Come by if you ever need a step stool or a reminder what day it is. Wednesday, I said. See, she said, smiling. You're already set. I hung a calendar on the wall and penciled in small appointments. Library card, flu shot, a cheap chair delivery window, coffee with a woman from church who once told me she left home at 60 and never looked back. In the square for Saturday, I wrote, market. Apples, potatoes, a roast if it's on sale. When I went back for the last of my things, Sabrina had piled 3 boxes by the door with a note on top in cheerful handwriting that manages to condescend without any adjectives at all. We went through your stuff to help. Inside were my tax returns, my passport, and the small velvet box that used to hold my wedding ring, empty now for years. The returns were reorganized. The passport had a sticky note that said, expired, though it wasn't. She'd underlined the date wrong. I photographed everything for the folder. I locked my copy of the folder in a bank box and put a backup in my oven, because no one under 40 thinks to look there for anything but burnt cookies. On Friday, my first night fully moved, I sat on the floor because the chair hadn't come yet and ate canned soup warmed on the stove, the spoon clinking against the pot like a small bell. When I finished, I washed the pot, wiped the counter, and stood by the window holding a mug as the city did what cities do at night. Car doors, laughter, someone yelling at a dog from a balcony 2 floors up. I felt alone and not lonely. There is a difference. The late fee from my old utility company auto-posted to my new account anyway because bureaucracy behaves like ivy. It finds a way through the smallest crack. I called, waited 12 minutes listening to a song I disliked since 1989, and spoke to a man named Carl who reversed it when I explained. "I'm sorry this happened," he said. It sounded like he meant it. I wrote Carl. Credit issued. Ref no. In my notebook. That $29 felt like reclaiming a square foot of my future. Mark texted Saturday morning. Brunch? I stared at the word the way you stare at a puddle you know is deeper than it looks. Yes. 11. I chose a diner with burnt coffee honesty and sat near the window where the light made everyone look kind. He arrived late, unshaven, eyes tired in a way that small sleep doesn't fully explain. He hugged me one-armed and smelled like a young man trying to smell like a successful one. Aftershave over stress. "I like your place," he said, like he'd already been. He probably had, standing in the hallway with Sabrina, declaring it insufficient. "It likes me," I said. We ordered eggs and toast. When they came, he buttered his, then mine, the way he did when he was 8 and practicing being a gentleman for a woman he hoped to impress someday. Habit is muscle deep. "I don't want you to think I don't appreciate you," he said, voice low. "Sabrina she worries. She worries about control," I said. "There's a difference. She says you're trying to glue me to the past. I am trying to glue you to your word." He flinched. We can't pay back the down payment on the schedule. The wedding went over. The car... Sell the car, I said. Drive a smaller one. Keep the promise the same size. "You sound like Dad," he said. It wasn't an accusation. It was grief, wearing his voice like a borrowed coat. "Then hear him," I said, "and hear me. I will not be poor to make you look rich." He stared at the tabletop where someone had carved a heart with 2 initials that didn't match anyone in the diner. His eyes filled and didn't spill. "Sabrina's mom thinks—" "I don't need her thoughts delivered to me," I said gently. "I need your decisions." He nodded, slow and painful. "Okay," he said. We'll make the payment this month. It'll be tight." "Tight builds discipline," I said. It built me. We ate. He told me about work, about the new manager who used words like synergy and meant overtime. I told him about the neighbor who warns about possessed washers. We laughed like people who still could. When the check came, he reached for it automatically and checked his wallet. He hesitated just enough to tell me he didn't have it. "I'll get it," I said. This time. I placed cash inside, money I could spare, and let it go without the fishing line of resentment attached. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're good fences that make good neighbors of the people you love and the parts of yourself you're still learning. On the walk out, he said, "Sabrina thinks we should get your mail redirected to our place just in case." "My mail follows me," I said, "like my decisions." He put his hands in his pockets the way he used to when he was caught out and wanted to look harmless. "She's not a bad person." "She's a dangerous one," I said. "Sometimes those overlap." He opened his mouth, closed it, nodded. Outside, a breeze lifted the corner of a flyer taped to the light pole. There was a number written at the bottom, tearable tabs with rip marks where people had taken a chance. Roommate needed it, said. I thought of all the ways we reframe help to make it look like charity, when it's really a transaction with different stakes. When I got home, I locked my door and set my phone to do not disturb for the first time in years. I listened to the radiator knock itself awake. I placed the new keys in a small bowl by the door and felt their weight, like a fact. In the quiet, I wrote my boundaries on an index card and taped them inside the kitchen cabinet. People talk about mantras. Mine reads like a list a lawyer would admire. Deed intact. Payments on time. Direct contact only. No surprise visits. Keep receipts. Call detective if threatened. On Sunday morning, my buzzer rang twice. An insistence you can hear even through metal. I checked the screen. A woman about my age, hair too carefully set for a casual visit, stood looking up at the camera like it owed her something. Evelyn, she said when I answered. I'm Sabrina's mother. We need to talk. I looked at my index card, then at my keys, then at the blue bowl catching September light. I pressed the button and let her in. She arrived dressed like an apology wrapped in pearls. On the buzzer, she'd said, I'm Sabrina's mother. We need to talk. Up close, she smelled like powder and lemongrass, the fragrance of people who want you to forget what they've done. Evelyn, she said, stepping past me before I'd finished opening the door. What a tidy place. It's new, I said. I'm still teaching it my name. She took the chair that faced the window, so the light softened her. She had the practiced poise of someone whose worst news always arrives with hors d'oeuvres. The leather satchel in her lap might have been a Bible. It was heavy enough to change a mind. I came alone, she said. Without Sabrina. I thought two women could be frank with one another. Frankness is free, I said. The consequences usually aren't. A flicker in her smile suggested we might speak the same language if we both got over ourselves. She unbuckled the satchel. Inside lay a stack of envelopes bound with a blue rubber band. Beside them, a single sheet of paper with a blank line for a signature and the word acknowledgement in a font chosen to look harmless. I'd prefer to settle this quietly, she said. Family to family. We're not family, I said. We share a son by proximity and a problem by design. She didn't flinch. You gave them money for the down payment, and now you're unhappy with where the boundary sits. So, let's correct it. She placed the envelopes on my table. $30,000. The down payment, plus what Sabrina says were wedding extras and a cushion for the unpleasantness, in cash. I looked at the stack. Money has a sound. Even zipped in paper envelopes, it hums like it knows it's been gathered for a purpose. 30,000 hums louder in a small apartment. You want a receipt, I said, keeping my voice level, and you want me to sign your acknowledgement that the matter is resolved. It would be best for everyone, she said. Her pearls glowed like warning buoys. For Sabrina, I said, and for you. She didn't argue. She adjusted a bracelet and let her eyes slide to the blue bowl on my sill, as if she were cataloging my life's resale value. We didn't come to this because we're villains, she said, turning back to me. We came because Sabrina has habits that look like needs to her. Control, I said. Security, she countered. You know how daughters are when they love men who remind them of their fathers. They fix what isn't broken, or they break it to prove they can fix it. My husband never tried to evict his own mother, I said. He also checked serial numbers when he counted cash. She tipped her head, conceding the point. A receipt, then, and this acknowledgement, simply that you won't pursue this further. No lawyers, no police. Detectives, I said. I've already spoken to one. Carefully. Pearls don't rattle, but the line at her mouth did. She smoothed the paper with two palms, the way people press linens before dinner. Detectives drag everyone into rooms they don't belong, she said softly. They make mistakes, and the people they hurt don't always mend. There's an old pattern in that sentence, I said. Am I hearing experience or rehearsed compassion? She folded her hands. You're not the first mother-in-law we've tried to bring along, she said, finally dropping the warm tone. My mother, Sabrina's grandmother, got mixed up with a man who took her checks and left her with nothing. We stepped in. We made hard choices. A guardianship, the home. It was ugly, but we kept the pieces together that mattered. Whose pieces? I asked. Her gaze didn't wobble. And before her, my aunt. She had a house big enough for winter and summer and too many bad ideas in between. By the time we organized her accounts, she'd bled through 3 annuities. You don't understand, Evelyn. Women who won't let go drown everyone around them. We put order back. Sometimes with paperwork, people don't like it first. My fingers went cold around the mug I hadn't drunk from. The story was honest enough to be a lie you could sit on. Rearranged, it said, we do this, we've done it before. We call it saving. It looks like theft unless you believe us. I reached for my notebook and wrote a date, a time, the words prior guardianship, and aunt. The act steadied me. She watched my pen and smiled the smile of a woman who's been deposed and survived it. I'm not them, I said. I pay my bills. My doctor vouches for my mind. I have a signed loan agreement and a deed with my name. You arrived with a notary and called it love. Her hand went to the envelopes like a reflex. 30,000, cash, today. Odd number for a down payment of 15, I said. You're not just returning money, you're buying silence. She lifted one shoulder. You'll be more comfortable with a cushion. Move to a nicer place, take a trip, put this behind us. Behind you, I said. In front of me is a pattern you just admitted into my living room. Her poise wavered, just for a second. Sabrina never forgave me for how things were with my mother, she murmured, almost to herself. She learned the wrong lesson, speed over consent. I was hoping to teach her the right one now. Make amends before men with badges explain them. What's the right lesson? I asked. That when you cross a line, you pay, she said. Quietly, if possible. The envelopes sat like small animals on my table. I thought of the late fee reversed by a man named Carl, the bruise on my calf, the blue bowl catching September light, my index card rules taped inside a cabinet like a spine. Cash has its own gravity. It pulls you toward yes. But I wanted my yes to mean more than please stop scaring me. Here are my terms, I said, and watched her pupils tighten the way they do when people realize you plan to drive. 1. You and Sabrina wire the full amount you owe under the loan agreement to my account by close of business tomorrow. No cash. Wires leave trails. 2. You'll sign your own acknowledgement, no release for me, stating that you attempted to coerce me into relinquishing property with a notary present and that you have now ceased. 3. We meet with Detective Alvarez at the county sheriff's office so your statement enters an official record. Her mouth made a small, perfect O. You can't be serious. I'm done being quiet, I said. Quiet got me a notary at my table. She tapped the envelopes, nails clicking. If you won't accept this, you may end up with nothing. I have a roof and a folder and a spine, I said, and a detective's card. That's not nothing. She thought about standing, then she thought better and leaned back, changing tack. Sabrina will fight you, she said. She's young. She believes in inevitability. Then teach her consequences, I said. She'll cut Mark off if he doesn't back her. He's already half gone, I said. A clean cut heals. What you two have been doing is infection. The line of her jaw hardened. She gathered the envelopes, slid them back into the satchel, closed the buckle with a click that sounded like a door deciding to be a wall. Last offer, she said. 20 now, 10 when you sign the acknowledgement. Or we do this the hard way. Hard for whom? I asked. She stood. You're stubborn, she said. That's not the same as brave. Brave is stubborn-aimed, I said. Watch. She hesitated. The pearls at her throat suddenly looked heavy. I don't want Sabrina arrested, she said. I don't want my grandchildren, when they come, to learn our names from a docket. Then don't teach her to write them there, I said. She surprised me by laughing. Not the brittle tinkle Sabrina uses, something older, dry and human. You might have been a friend, she said. Then act like one, I answered. She left. The door latched. My apartment was itself again, smaller without her, but taller somehow, like it had been holding its breath. I poured the untouched coffee into the sink, washed the mug, set it on the drying rack, and called Detective Alvarez. Update, I said when he picked up. Sabrina's mother came with cash and a one-page acknowledgement for me to sign in exchange for my silence. He whistled softly. That's quick movement. Did you accept any money? No. I set conditions, wire transfer, written admission of coercion attempts, and a meeting with you. Good, he said. Cash complicates paper trails. If you get anything like that again, photograph it, count it on camera, and deposit it immediately with a teller's statement if you must accept it for safety. But you're within your rights to refuse. She told me stories about prior guardianships in her family, I said. They sounded like cleanup jobs that worked because no one pressed charges. That tracks, he said. These patterns often repeat inside families. Did she say names? Dates? No names, I said. An aunt? A grandmother? A man who took checks? A guardianship? Log it, he said. We'll work with what we have. Are you ready to make a formal statement? It triggers paperwork, likely interviews. If we proceed, there could be an arrest if we establish probable cause. That can be hard on families. Hard already happened on my coffee table, I said. I'm ready. He set an appointment. I hung up and wrote my notes while the edges were still sharp. The satchel, the envelopes, the font choice that pretended to be kind. I printed a second copy and slid both into my file. Armor, again. At noon, my phone lit with Mark's name. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Mom, he said, voice strained. What did you say to Sabrina's mom? She came home upset. She came to offer cash in exchange for my silence, I said. I declined. I suggested we all meet with the detective who handles elder fraud. Silence stretched thin and hot. You called the police on us? I called the county sheriff's office to report a scheme to force me off a deed I helped finance, I said. If that us includes you, it's because you put yourself in the group. This could ruin our lives, he said. It might save them, I said. He exhaled like he'd been punched. She says she'll pay you back, Mom. She'll make it right. Just don't press charges. She doesn't owe me money, I said. You do, and making it right isn't paying me to forget. It's not doing the thing again. We didn't. He stopped. Words failed where facts stood. I'll come over, he said finally. We'll talk. Come alone, I said. No papers, no recordings. You came with a notary 3 days after your wedding, I said. You'll forgive me if I verify. He showed up an hour later looking like last night's argument still sat on his shoulders. He took in my small apartment as if it had been arranged to convict him. She shouldn't have brought cash, he said. She acts like the world is a leak you can plug with bills. You chose a woman who learned from a woman who thinks that, I said. So either choose differently now or learn a different lesson faster. He rubbed his eyes. We can't afford to wire the full amount by tomorrow. You could sell the car, I said. You could cancel the trip. You could take the second bedroom and get a roommate who doesn't wear pearls. You could... many things. The one thing you can't do is keep my name on a deed you'd wipe me off of and call it love. You're making me choose. No, I said. Your choices put you here. I'm just refusing to be the cushion you fall on. He looked at his hands like they had answers. If I meet with this detective, he said slowly, and I tell the truth, what happens to Sabrina? I don't know, I said. That's not my job anymore. My job is my roof, my rights, my name. He swallowed. Can I see the loan agreement again? I handed him a copy from my folder. He read it the way you read a map someone told you was wrong. When he got to the line about repayment schedule and default, his jaw tightened. "We signed this," he said. "I signed this." "You did," I said. He set the paper down like it might bite. "I'll be at the station tomorrow," he said. "I don't know what Sabrina will do, but He stopped, teeth clenched around the end of a sentence that would have been an apology if it hadn't had to climb over his pride. "Bring your own car," I said, kinder than I felt. "Don't depend on hers for once." He left without hugging me. The door clicked with a finality that trembled at the edges. I breathed, counted to 10, then to 60, then to the end of a song the building's old pipes play when someone turns on a shower 2 floors up. That evening, Sabrina called. I let it go to voicemail, then played it on speaker with my notebook open. "You're cruel," she said. "You're vindictive. You're determined to humiliate us. All this over a deed you don't even live under anymore. Take the money. Sign the acknowledgement. My mother was generous." I wrote her words verbatim, the way the detective likes them. No flourishes, no interpretations, just the spine of the thing. At the end, she said, "If you go through with this, I will regret ever letting you into our lives," and hung up. I thought of the night I'd handed her my son's childhood photos in a shoebox and watched her cry over a preschool craft project. Letting is a strange verb. It assumes a gate and a hand on it. The next morning, I took the bus to the bank and asked the teller to show me how to set up inbound wires. She printed the instructions and circled my routing number, then offered me a lollipop the color of fake cherries. I took it. I like small, silly sweetness when the rest of the day will taste like steel. At the county sheriff's office, the lobby chairs were the kind that understand waiting. A poster on the wall listed numbers to call if someone you love starts controlling your mail, your visitors, your money. I didn't read it long. I knew the lines by heart. Detective Alvarez met me with a legal pad and the kind of nod that says, "You're not the first, you won't be the last, but today you're mine to look after." "We'll take your statement," he said. "Then, depending on what Mr. Hart shares, we may prepare a warrant or conduct a knock and talk. Either way, do not engage directly if tensions spike." "Tensions are a family tradition," I said, "but I'll be careful." I told my story into a recorder. The wedding speech, the notary, the threats, the cash satchel, the acknowledgement, the words guardianship and aunt from Sabrina's mother's lips. I handed over printouts, photos, my doctor's letter, the pharmacy slip, screenshots of texts. My handwriting on the notebook lines looked steadier than I felt. He asked questions that found edges I didn't know were there. When we finished, he clicked the recorder off and slid me a copy of my statement to read and sign. I did. My name, a small, stubborn flag. On my way out, my phone buzzed. A message from the bank. Incoming wire $7,500 pending. Another buzz. Incoming wire $7,500 pending. Then a third. Then a fourth. Staggered, as if someone were feeding a reluctant machine. By the time I reached the bus stop, the pending had changed to posted. 30,000, not in envelopes on my table where fear could touch it, but lined up in my account with reference numbers like guardrails. The relief came and didn't. Cash in the right column doesn't erase harm in the left. It does, however, pay first month's rent and take the temperature down in your chest by a degree. I called Detective Alvarez. "They wired the money," I said, "all of it." "Good," he said. "That's restitution. It's also not the same as no crime committed." "I know," I said. "I'm not changing my statement." "Understood," he said. "We're moving." That night, someone slid an unmarked envelope under my door. Inside was a photocopy of my driver's license with "expired" scrawled across it in a hand I knew from a dozen wedding lists. It wasn't expired. Sabrina had misread the date or pretended to. I documented it, then laughed out loud in my kitchen because sometimes you have to choose laughter or you'll drown in the other thing. I taped a fresh index card to my cabinet. No cash, No corridors? Paper only. Proceed. Then I wrote a letter I'd been composing in my head since the day the notary stood in my living room. It was to a granddaughter who didn't exist yet, a baby I hoped would one day sit on my rug and spill crackers into the blue bowl. I told her about names on deeds, about love that pays what it owes, about brave being stubborn aimed. I told her father once buttered my toast for me because he thought that was care. And it was, and it still counted even after the hard parts came. I told her that if anyone ever brought a notary to her table without her consent, she should make them coffee and show them the door, and call a detective whose job it is to catch what people try to clean up with cash. When I finished, I folded the letter and tucked it into my file. Not because I needed it for court, but because I needed it for the part of me that still wanted to forgive without receipts. In the morning, the sun found the blue bowl again. My phone lit with a text from Mark. 10 a.m. I'll be there. A second text followed, like a footnote trying to become a chapter. I'm coming alone. I looked at the chair across from mine, the one Sabrina's mother had taken the day before like it belonged to her. Then I moved it a little farther from the window. I wanted the light to fall clean on the person who sat there next. At 6:58 a.m., the kettle clicked off, and the building's pipes sang their morning hymn. At 7:03, my phone buzzed with a number I'd saved under Alvarez and a note that read, "Answer, even with shampoo in your eyes. We're serving it now," he said. "Stay put. If anyone contacts you, don't engage. I'll call after." I set the mug down without drinking. The steam thinned in the air like a minor miracle deciding not to be seen. I didn't see the door, the badges, or the way Sabrina's mouth must have turned into a hard line that looked enough like composure to fool the untrained eye. I only know what 7 a.m. knocks feel like. They pry at the day and leave fingerprints. 20 minutes later, a group text pinged my phone by mistake. Sabrina's friends in a thread titled, "Narc Brunch Babes," a screenshot of a booking page. Her full name, a line that said suspicion of financial exploitation of an older adult and attempted coercion. The messages below bloomed fast. WTF? Is this a joke? Call me now. By 8:10, my hallway smelled like fresh coffee and nosiness. Mrs. Patel knocked twice and poked her head in with the neighborly authority of someone who has seen plenty. "You okay?" "I'm more okay than at 7, I said. She lifted her phone, eyebrows up. "Local blotters already got it. They post fast. You want me to stop by the desk and ask for quiet on your floor?" "Please," I said. "And thank you." At 9:02, my doctor's office called to confirm they'd faxed another copy of my competency letter at the detective's request. "Keep hydrating," the nurse chirped. I drank water like it was a job. Mark was due at 10. He arrived at 9:37, ahead of his courage. He didn't knock. He pressed the buzzer with long, punishing holds until I buzzed him in and stood behind my open door, as if wood could soften what a son might say. "What did you do?" he said before hello. He looked like a man who'd slept in a chair next to trouble. "I told the truth," I said. "You had her arrested." "I gave a statement," I said. "An arrest is what happens when someone with a badge believes there's cause." He ran both hands through his hair like he could rake order into a day already decided. "Her mother's on the phone with everybody," he said. "They put Sabrina on leave until this clears." HR said that word like it was a car wash. "I'm sorry you're in pain," I said. "I'm not sorry, I refuse to be erased." He flinched. "This is going to ruin us," he said. "Attorney retainers, bail, the house." "Do not say the house like you don't know what I hear," I said. "Say the house we promised to me with my name on it. Say the house we asked you to help us buy, then say whatever comes next." His mouth worked, then closed. He sat. The chair looked like it wanted to give him a softer back than he deserved. "We can't afford this," he whispered. "We were all ready." "I know," I said. "You told me at brunch. Tight builds discipline. Sometimes it also builds a reckoning." He covered his face, and the sound he made wasn't a sob. It was a hinge deciding whether to hold. "I don't know how to be two people," he said. "I can't be a husband to her and a son to you and get both parts right." "The test isn't whether you please us," I said. "It's whether you tell the truth and pay what you owe." He looked up. "She says you're vindictive." "She tried to buy my silence with envelopes and a word called acknowledgement," I said. "She threatened me with guardianship and pills. She brought a notary into my kitchen. I am many things. Vindictive is not the one that brought her that far." He swallowed. "They took her out in front of the neighbors," he said, small and unbelieving. "Mom, she was barefoot. She looked at me like I'd pushed her." I thought of the first time he'd fallen off his bike and looked at me like gravity was my fault. "I can't make this easier," I said. "I can make you coffee." He nodded. His hands shook when he took the cup. By noon, my phone had learned new choreography: unknown numbers, voicemails, blocked calls. A reporter left a message I deleted without listening. My pastor called. I answered. "I'm not asking for advice," I said. "Just prayer, and if people chatter, a reminder that gossip is still listed under sins." "Consider it done," he said. The kindness in his voice steadied my spine. Detective Alvarez called at 12:31. "She's been booked and released on bond," he said. "Standard conditions: no contact with you, no firearms, surrender passport. We're drafting the probable cause statement for the prosecutor. We'll also be interviewing the notary, Mr. Draper, and requesting the text threads you sent. Do you need me for anything today?" "Two things," he said. "First, don't answer private numbers. Second, if your son experiences retaliation at work because he's cooperating, we'll document it." "He hasn't decided if he's cooperating," I said. I looked at Mark, who was scrolling through his phone like it might conjure a way to be the man he wished this morning required. "But he's in the room with me." "Mr. Hart," the detective said, voice angled slightly upward so mine carried it through the speaker. "If you're listening, I urge you to tell the truth when we speak. It will be better now than later." Mark stared at the middle distance where shame and anger take their coffee. "Okay," he said, barely audible. The day stretched and snapped. My name appeared in a docket entry I didn't want to read. Someone from church texted a screenshot with "praying" as a caption, which is not the same as permission but can feel like it if you're not careful. I put my phone face down and watched the radiator tick itself cool. At 4:18, Sabrina called from a number my phone marked potential spam. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail that started without breath. "You think this ends me?" she said, voice clean and practiced even with fury under it. "It ends you. You won't see your grandchildren. You won't see your son." I hit save and labeled it for the file. At 5:02, her mother called. I answered because I wanted her to hear what my voice sounded like when it was done being polite. "Evelyn," she said. "This is grotesque." "It is," I said. "The paperwork you brought to my table was grotesque." "We wired the money," she said, as if restitution were a talisman that kept consequence away. "You were made whole." "Money is not absolution," I said. "It's arithmetic." She inhaled sharply. "You've made enemies you didn't need." "I had them already," I said. "They just preferred soft lighting." That night, the county sheriff's office called to confirm a no-contact order had been served. "If she or anyone on her behalf approaches you, call," the deputy said. "If she posts about you without naming you, screenshot and send. If she tries to triangulate through your son, write down dates and exact words." "I know how to write," I said. "It's my best skill after breathing." I slept the way you sleep after a storm, tired but alert, one ear still turned toward the door. At dawn, I woke to the sound of a message falling into my inbox like a book dropped flat. Notice of arraignment, a date, a time, a courtroom number. My name as victim on a line it had never been on before. At 8:11, Mark texted, "I can't go into work. They saw the blotter. My manager said take personal time." The quotes around personal time did the work of a paragraph. "I'll meet with the detective today." Then, I'm not ready to see you." The sentence stiffened and stood between us like a piece of furniture you keep bumping into. I spent the morning doing the opposite of scandal: laundry, list-making, numbering the pages in my notebook so nothing could fall out later and be called a mistake. I bought groceries and let a cashier bag my apples in paper because the plastic had a hole and I'd learned to stop saying yes to things that didn't hold. At noon, Alvarez called. "We spoke to Mr. Draper," he said. "He corroborated the attempted signing, your refusal, and the presence of language suggesting assisted living without cause. We also pulled call logs. The threats about pills help. The cash offer hurts them and helps you." "Will this go to trial?" I asked. "That's up to the prosecutor and the defendant," he said. "Many cases plea out. Regardless, prepare yourself. Friends pick sides, employers read dockets, holiday tables shrink, but so does fear." After we hung up, a delivery guy brought flowers with a card that read, "Let's stop this." S. I photographed, documented, and handed the vase to Mrs. Patel down the hall, who put them on top of the washing machines like a sacrifice to the gods of lint. "Pretty," she said, "but not for keeping." Evening. I made soup. I ate half and put the rest away because I finally had a fridge where leftovers stayed mine. The buzzer went at 8:39, 2 short, 1 long, Sabrina's pattern. My thumb hovered over talk and then didn't move. "Ms. Hart," her voice came thin through the intercom, "I just want to talk." "No contact," I said. "That includes my door." "Coward," she hissed. "You hide behind men with badges." "I hid behind a folder first," I said. "The badge came later." Silence, then quieter. "I loved you." "You loved what I could fund," I said. "That's not the same. You're destroying my marriage." "I'm not in your marriage," I said. "But consequences are. Tell them hello." Her breath hit the microphone. "He'll choose me," she said. "He always will." "You keep telling yourself that," I said, and set the handset down like a gavel. When I turned, the apartment felt smaller and somehow steadier, like a boat that's decided which way the river runs. I washed my bowl, dried it, put it back in the cabinet, and checked the index card rules I'd taped there. Deed intact. Payments on time. Direct contact only. No surprise visits. Keep receipts. Call detective if threatened. I added, "Do not open the door for sorrow wearing perfume." At 10:12, Mark texted, "We might have to sell. Lawyers, bail, everything. It's too much." The words landed with the weight of a wall and the shape of a possibility I'd already imagined, but not invited. "If we do, I'll make you whole." Then, I don't know what whole means anymore. I looked at the blue bowl, at the lamp that made a pool of light that didn't spill where it wasn't welcome, at the keys in the dish by the door. I typed, "Whole means keeping your word even when it costs. We'll sort the math." I didn't add, "I will not subsidize your courage. He'd have to find his own." I turned the deadbolt and went to bed. Somewhere across town, a docket number sat on a screen waiting for a judge to read it in the morning. Somewhere nearer, a son lay awake on a couch because a bed built on denial makes for bad sleep. I stared at the ceiling until the pipes sang again, and when they did, I finally closed my eyes. The courthouse smelled like pencils and old rain. By the time I found the right courtroom, my name had already been said once by a clerk who made it sound like a password and not a person. I sat in the second row because the first felt like a dare. Sabrina came in on her lawyer's left. She'd chosen gray, penitent, without conceding to black. Her hair was pulled back so tight you could hear it think. Mark trailed 2 steps behind her and didn't sit beside either of us. He took a seat on the aisle like a man who might need an exit fast. "All rise," the bailiff said, and we did. And the judge walked in with the face of someone who has learned to tell the difference between apology and strategy. The prosecutor read the charges: attempted coercion, attempted financial exploitation of an older adult, harassment. The words sounded colder aloud than on paper. Sabrina's lawyer stood and said the word, plea. The way you present a compromise you've convinced yourself is mercy. Your Honor, he said, my client will plead guilty to 1 count of attempted financial exploitation and accept conditions the state proposes. 2 years probation, restitution already satisfied, a no-contact order, and community service. The judge slid his glasses down an inch. Miss Cole, he said, is this your plea? Sabrina's voice when it came was steady. Yes, Your Honor. And is it voluntary? Yes. The judge nodded once, then found me in the second row the way a lighthouse finds a small boat. Ms. Hart, do you wish to make a statement? I did. I didn't. I stood anyway. I'm not here to be dramatic, I said, hands folded to keep them from making a case all their own. I'm here to say what happened and what it costs. A woman brought a notary to my kitchen and tried to erase my name from a deed I helped pay for. When I refused, she threatened guardianship and whispered pills. She told me safety. She meant control. I want the court to remember there are a lot of us who don't have folders and detectives and churches that answer the phone. I do. I'm lucky. The sentence should say something to the ones who don't. I sat down to the sound of paper being adjusted and someone sniffing in the back row. Mark didn't look at me. He stared at his shoes like salvation lives in laces. The judge leaned forward, elbows on the bench. Ms. Cole, he said, people like to call what you did a family matter. Here's the problem with that euphemism. The law does not stop at the threshold of a kitchen table. You threatened the plaintiff with guardianship to compel a transfer of property. You used the presence of a notary like a cudgel. You tried to buy silence with cash in envelopes. You are not the first person to do this in my courtroom. You will not be the last, but you will serve as an example. He read the conditions slowly, as if each line needed to find a place to land. 2 years probation, 250 hours of community service, 100 of which would be served at the county's Elder Resource Center, doing things that do not involve money. Laundry, meals, filing, mandatory classes on financial ethics, completion of a course on power of attorney law, a 5-year no-contact order, prohibited from working in any job with fiduciary responsibility, a victims panel where she would listen and not speak. Then he said the part that knocked the air out of the room. In addition, he said, you will serve 30 days in county custody, weekends only. Report Friday nights at 6. Release Sunday at 6. This will continue for 15 consecutive weekends. A sound came from Sabrina like a hinge ripping off a door. Her lawyer set a hand on her arm. She shook him off. This is punitive, she said before her counsel could stop her. This, the judge said, not raising his voice, is proportionate. Do not speak out of turn again. The gavel wasn't loud. I've heard soup spoons make more noise, but it ended things. In the hush after, paperwork began its scaffolding work. The clerk gathered signatures like a harvest. The bailiff spoke in the soft directives that sounded merciful only because he never had to shout. Sabrina wasn't led away in handcuffs. The shock was the sentence itself, 30 days broken into pieces that would reorder her weekends into consequences. The women in the back row murmured a little. I tried not to listen. Stories grow faster in whispers. Outside the courtroom, Mark found me because there was nowhere else to go. 30 days, he said, like I'd set the number. Weekends. The judge said what he said, I replied. Call your lawyer if you want a different word for it. He looked older than last week, which is different from looking tired. Her job will... He stopped. The sentence didn't fight its way out. We both knew what weekend custody does to jobs that require Saturdays for being seen. I'm not here to manage her calendar, I said. Or yours. He swallowed. We have to sell, Mom. The we was less habit this time and more math. Lawyers lost income, we can't keep the house, not even with roommates. It's... He made a motion that might have been a building imploding or a heart caving in. I'll make you whole. Words like whole and fair are neighbors who borrow each other's lawnmowers and never return them, I said. Let's use numbers. You list at market, you pay off the mortgage, you pay the realtor, you pay back the loan we documented. You split any remaining equity in proportion to our contributions, less my moving costs and the late fees your paused allowance caused. I held his gaze. We'll do it in writing. He nodded. It wasn't enthusiasm. It was surrender to the fact that paper keeps better promises than people. Do you want to keep a peace? He asked. Stay on the deed, if we somehow keep it. No, I said. I want my name only where I actually live. For a second, relief flickered. Then it went out. She says I'm choosing you. You're choosing math, I said, and law, and the version of yourself who can look at his own son someday and say, I kept my word even when it hurt. He flinched. If there is a son, he said, if there's still a marriage. That, I said, is not a choice I can or will make for you. We walked to the stairwell because elevators tell stories with their buttons if you're in the wrong mood. On the landing, in the kind of echo that's good for truth, he said, I knew about the notary. The world tilted a degree and then righted. How early? I asked. The night before, he said. She said it would be easier to do it while you were off guard. She said... He stopped. Color climbed his neck. She said everyone in her family does hard things fast so they don't hurt as long. She learned it somewhere, I said. Her mother tried to teach you with cash. He closed his eyes like you do when you've let a car roll back and hit something. I should have stopped it. You should have, I said. Then, because mercy without receipts isn't mercy, it's erasure. I added, and you didn't. But you stopped it later. That counts in the column it belongs to. He nodded, a small bow to arithmetic and to a woman in a bench who wouldn't sign what didn't belong to her. The house went on the market the next Thursday. The listing photos made it look larger than the rooms I'd measured with my grief. Buyers tromped through and opened closets that still smelled like Mark's childhood. Pencils, wool, dust that knows what winter is. Offers came because interest rates had settled, and people like a street with trees that remember names. We accepted one that didn't try to fish the number down with pity. At the closing, the lawyer put a stack of documents in front of me. Deed transfer, settlement statement, wire details. I initialed and signed and watched numbers move from someone's laptop into my account. It felt like a heartbeat finding a rhythm after a run. Sabrina didn't attend. Weekend 3 of custody had taught her that concrete smells the same in every facility and that apology is harder to fake when it's being measured in hours instead of adjectives. Her mother sent an email with the subject line. We should have done this differently, and a body that contained exactly one sentence. We will not contact you again. It didn't ask forgiveness, and I didn't offer it the way some people hand out peppermints, out of habit more than decision. Mark and I stood on the porch after the closing and looked at the house like people visiting an old school. We picked the paint color together, he said, touching the door frame. You let me choose even though you hated it. I didn't hate it, I said. I hated the way it dried. That's different. He laughed a little. The sound had dust in it. I'm moving into a rental near my work, he said. 6 months, maybe longer. Sabrina. We're taking space. I hope you find the version of both of you that tells the truth, I said. Together or apart? He turned. Do you still want to see me? I want to see the man who doesn't bring notaries to kitchens, I said. I want to see the father you might be. My throat tightened on that word before I could stop it. I let it. If you find him, my door has an elevator. He nodded. Can I help you carry anything? I've got it, I said. For once, let your hands be free. Sabrina's weekends stacked up like beads on a rosary you don't pray to, you endure. I didn't follow the schedule. The docket followed for anyone who clicked. People clicked. Church ladies whispered. Mrs. Patel brought me a newspaper clipping once, and I said, "Recycle." And she did without reading it aloud. The community service director at the Elder Center called to verify my no-contact order and to ask, gently, if I preferred to schedule my chair yoga at times that did not overlap with certain volunteers. "Yes," I said, "and thank you." Later, someone told me they'd seen Sabrina folding towels in the laundry room with rage so tidy it looked like competence. "Good," I said. "Towels are safer than deeds?" One afternoon, on her way into custody, Sabrina left me a voicemail that was just breathing, and the word "why." I didn't save it. Not every artifact belongs in the folder. When the wire from closing hit my account, I went to the credit union and asked for a certificate of deposit that would ladder out over the next 5 years. "Conservative," I told the manager. "I want slow, not clever." She printed the forms and gave me a small, polite smile that felt like respect instead of pity. On the way home, I bought apples and a roast if it was on sale. It was. I wrote roast $11.49 in the notebook because the practice of keeping receipts has become a kind of prayer. Mark came by with a folding table and 2 chairs like a newly divorced man setting up a new life. He wasn't divorced. He was something more fragile. Unconvinced. We ate takeout on cardboard, and he told me about work, about his manager who had learned not to say synergy around him. He asked if I'd gotten the chair I'd ordered. I had. We sat in it, taking turns like kids testing a seesaw. "I'm sorry," he said without preface, fork held like a flag half raised, "not for getting caught. For thinking getting away with it would mean it wasn't wrong." "Apology accepted," I said. "Not his blanket, just his sweater. Warm enough for today." He grinned into his plate. "You always make metaphors out of clothes." "Clothes are honest," I said. "They either fit or they don't." He looked at the blue bowl which had started catching October light the way it used to catch September's. "Do you ever miss, family?" "I have a family," I said. "It's just been rearranged." I took a breath. "After your father died, I kept you close in a way that made the world feel like an attack I had to block with my body. That wasn't fair. It made leaving harder for you and letting go harder for me. I should have given you more space earlier, but I won't apologize for loving you enough to count the spoons." He nodded. "Thank you for the space now," he said softly. "Even while you're counting." Week 12 of Sabrina's weekends, Mark texted me a photo of a room with white walls and a mattress on the floor and a plant in the corner, trying its hardest. "My place for now," he wrote. A week later, sold the car. Another week, interviewed for a different team. I never asked about Sabrina unless he offered. He rarely did. The day the sale proceeds cleared, I took an envelope of cash, small on purpose, enough for ritual, not for retail, and put it in the fireproof box with a note that read, "For Joy only." I didn't know what joy would look like at 68. A train trip, a good coat. Apples for a pie I'd carry down the hall to Mrs. Patel because there's no point in baking if you can't hand a slice to someone whose washer doesn't eat socks. On Sabrina's last weekend in custody, she didn't call. She didn't have to. Consequences don't need an audience. Monday came. Tuesday followed, stubborn as always. The judge's orders stood like fence posts in a field that had finally been surveyed. The next time I saw Detective Alvarez, it was in line at the grocery store. He had canned tomatoes and bread. I had beans and coffee and the roast if it was still on sale. We didn't discuss the case. He nodded. I nodded. The way people do when they've seen each other's names on paper and decided to be human anyway. At the door, he said, "How's your roof?" "Owned," I said. "Good," he said, and held the door for an old woman who wasn't me and wasn't going to be, not without paperwork and not today. At home, I taped a new index card inside the cabinet. Court done. House sold. Account steady. Boundaries intact. Then, under it, smaller. Make room for ordinary good. I turned on the lamp that makes a pool of light and sat in it, eating stew with a spoon that clinked like punctuation. When the phone rang, it was Mark. "I don't know what we are," he said, voice quiet, without the scrape of pride. "But I know where I ended up when everything drained. Here, with you." "I'm not a landing pad," I said. "I'm a person with a kitchen." He laughed. "Can I come over anyway?" "Yes," I said. "Bring bread." He did. We ate it with butter, the way he used to when he was 8 and trying out manners. He told me about a colleague who showed him how to stretch soup 3 ways. I told him about Mrs. Patel's grandnephew who has learned the washer's moods like a language. We didn't mention Sabrina. We didn't mention court. The quiet wasn't avoidance. It was rest. Later, when he stood to go, he lingered in the doorway like a man measuring a thing he can't count yet. "If I have kids," he said, would you? "I'll keep crackers in the blue bowl," I said. "That's a yes." He left. I washed the butter knife and dried it and set it where it belonged. Outside, the radiator sang itself to sleep. Inside, my life did not ask to be dramatic. It asked for apples and a roast if it was on sale, and a son who knocked first. The docket would be what the docket would be. The world would say its piece. And then, because it always does, it would move on. I stood in my small kitchen and felt the particular contentment that comes from having 4 chairs and the right to decide who sits in them. Tomorrow, I would write a letter, not to a judge, to the person I hadn't met yet. Small feet, soft fists, a mouth that will one day ask for stories. I would tell her about deeds and notaries and how love has more to do with receipts than people like to admit. I would tell her the Radiator song is not a hymn, but you can pray to it anyway. I would tell her brave is just stubborn pointed well. Then I would walk to the market, and if the roast was on sale, I'd buy 2. The winter after court was the kind that takes its time. Pipes sang in the mornings, the elevator's cable hummed like a steady old friend, and I kept an index card inside the cabinet that said, "Make room for ordinary good." I took it seriously like a prescription. Ordinary good looked like this: chair yoga on Tuesdays, library on Thursdays for large print mysteries and the satisfaction of stamping dates, a market list taped to the fridge with apples, potatoes, roast if on sale written in a hand that had stopped shaking. I learned which bus drivers waved and which wanted their quiet. I learned my radiator's moods and when to set a pot of soup just to catch the warmth. I learned again the trick of eating half and saving half like a note to tomorrow. I've got you. On my table, I kept the folder. Not like a weapon, like a tool that had done its work and now lived in the drawer with the good scissors. Every few weeks I opened it, checked the tabs, added a receipt, closed it again. The ritual was as soothing as knitting. Order is a way to lower your shoulders. Mark came around on Sundays. Sometimes he talked about work. Sometimes we traded silence for soup. He'd knock, I'd say, "Door." He'd come in and put his phone in a bowl on the counter without my asking. The first time he did it, I didn't say anything. I handed him the wooden spoon. He learned to make a roux that didn't break. He learned that the washer on the left eats socks and to use the right one unless he wanted to visit Mrs. Patel and apologize. We didn't talk much about Sabrina. The no-contact order worked the way fences do, unspectacularly, and for the better. Her weekends ended. Her probation did its slow math. Once I saw her across a street I didn't need to cross. She looked past me like daylight hurts when you've been inside too long. I kept walking. Mercy can be distance. In March, Mark sat down holding a paper cup and a secret. "Say it," I told him. "I'm going to be a dad," he said, both proud and afraid. "She's due in September." I pressed my palms to the table. "Okay," I said, because that word has a lot of rooms in it. "How are you?" "Hopeful," he said. "Terrified." "That's the recipe," I said. "Do you want stew or tea?" "Both," he said, and I made both because there are times you don't choose. He brought me sonograms that looked like clouds deciding to be a person. I bought a secondhand crib from a neighbor who cried when we loaded it into the elevator because it had been her grandson's. I oiled the screws and put it in the corner where the lamp makes a pool of light big enough for reading aloud. I washed tiny clothes in the washer that doesn't eat socks. I taped a new card inside the cabinet. When the baby comes, crackers in the blue bowl, floor clear, nap for me when she naps. September arrived on time. He called from the hospital parking lot, voice high and young. "She's here," he said. "She's perfect." "What's her name?" "June," he said. Like the month that felt like a second chance. I made a pie. I put on clean socks. I sat by the door and didn't pace because pacing doesn't make elevators go faster. He brought her the next afternoon, small and furious at air. I held her in the light and watched her eyes learn my face. "Hello, June," I said. "I've been practicing your name." He put down a bag with more gear than I ever owned for a camping trip. He looked around, ready to be told what to do. I pointed at the sink. "Wash your hands," I said. "Then breathe." He did both. We learned the choreography of a nap on my couch. We learned to pat and sway and that my lamp switch clicks too loudly once she's down. I moved the lamp to the floor and threw a shawl over the shade, the way my mother used to when she wanted night earlier. When she was 6 months old, she reached for the blue bowl and found crackers. I cried in the gentle, embarrassing way a woman cries when a plan lands exactly where she meant it to. "It's just a snack," Mark said, laughing. "Mom, why are you—" "It's not just a snack," I said. "It's proof." By summer, June shrieked with joy at ceiling fans and found the wall mirror fascinating. She came 3 afternoons a week, a schedule as holy to me as church. Mark stayed for the first hour, then left to run errands he could have done in half the time but stretched because trust is a muscle, and this is how we were building it. He'd return in time for bath or bottle and sit on the floor with his socks off like a teenager in detention who'd been upgraded to recess. "You're good at this," I told him once as he wiped applesauce off his own ear, "even when you don't look like the brochure." He grinned. I learned from someone who can make soup from bones and still find a way to be kind to herself. I wrote the letter I'd been composing and kept revising. I wrote it over weeks, then all at once. I wrote it on paper, not a screen, because ink forces your hand to mean it. It began. Dear June, one day you will understand the difference between a gift and a trade. A gift leaves your hand open. A trade ties a string. I told her about my blue bowl, not because it's magic, but because it taught me that what you keep ready says who you are. I told her about how people try to clean mess with cash and how receipts are just love in numbers. I told her that when someone brings a notary to your kitchen without your consent, you can make coffee if you want to, but you should also show them the door and your doctor's letter and call the person whose job it is to care about the things people call family matters when they mean, "We hoped no one would look." I kept the letter in the folder until the day she took her first steps. 2 tiny, unbelieving slides across my rug toward the blue bowl because it held 1 cracker like a prize. Mark clapped. I didn't. I held my breath and watched her face change when she realized her own feet obeyed. When she toppled, I didn't rush. She looked to me. I smiled. She laughed. We counted that as success. After, while she slept with her arms thrown over her head like a dancer who forgot not to be dramatic, I took the letter out, added a line, and slipped it into an envelope named for her. The house I no longer owned visited me sometimes in dreams, rooms expanding and shrinking like lungs. In waking life, I walked past the street now and then when I needed to remember that thresholds aren't altars. A new family lived there with bikes on the porch and chalk on the walk. Good. Houses should have scuffs. They should belong to whoever is sweeping at dusk. Sabrina stayed in the edges of our life, not because I banished her, but because the fence held. When she wanted a change to the custody schedule, she texted Mark. He asked me if Thursday could be Wednesday. I answered like a grown-up who had soup planned. Once during a handoff, we were both on the sidewalk not speaking. June looked back and forth between us, then at the pigeons. She chose pigeons. It felt right to leave the choice with a bird for now. Money settled its shoulders. I lived inside a budget that fit like a good coat. I laddered my small savings, learned what interest can do when you let it sit. I bought oranges out of season once and forgave myself for the price. I replaced my shoes before the soles made me swear. I learned to accept help from Mrs. Patel's grandnephew when he insisted on carrying cat litter up the stairs because I'd held June for an hour so his aunt could nap. Community is just favors with memory. In October, I took a train trip using money from the envelope I'd labeled "for joy only." A window, a book, a sandwich that tasted better because someone else wrapped it in waxed paper. I looked out at fields and thought about boundaries that are fences you can see and borders that are imaginary lines we still manage to fight over. I came home to my radiator and the blue bowl and a message from Mark that said, "June tried to say your name." It came out Nin. It was perfect. You take the names you're given and grow into them. On Thanksgiving, we made a small dinner and didn't set a fourth place for ghosts. We ate what we could afford and liked, which turned out to be most of it. After pie, Mark stood to leave and hesitated in the doorway, the way men do when their sentences have reached the word thanks and can't quite find the next part. "You knew I'd come back," he said. "I knew you'd want to," I said. "That's different." "I'm learning the difference," he said. "You are," I said. "Bring more bread next time. We have our rituals now." He knocks. I say door. He comes in and takes off his shoes. June runs to the rug and does a little hop as if the rug has a spring. I put crackers in the blue bowl, then apples, then sometimes nothing because she has to learn that a bowl is not a promise. It's a container. We stack blocks. We put them away. We do not leave things where someone could trip. That's literal and not. Every so often I open the folder and take out the letter and reread what I promised my granddaughter when she was only a rumor. When she is old enough to read it, I'll hand it to her with my landline number written at the bottom. If the world tries to hand her a notary with a smile, she can call me. If I'm gone by then, she can call the person whose job it is to care about what people call private when they mean, "Please don't look too closely." I don't think much about the courthouse anymore, or about weekend custody schedules that cut a life into teachable pieces. I think about soup and budgets and how light changes in November. I think about how a spine can be trained by simple reps. Say no, write it down, keep receipts, love with boundaries. I think about how brave is just stubborn pointed well, and how stubborn gets softer when you're holding a baby who's trying to stand. Last week, June slept on my chest and drooled a little, and I didn't move, because sometimes stillness is work. When she woke, she put her palm flat against my collarbone like a stamp and said, "Nian," clear this time like a fact. I kissed her hand. We walked the length of the rug together. One step, one breath, one small victory pretending not to be a victory so it wouldn't scare her. Outside, someone yelled lovingly at a dog. Inside, the radiator ticked. I put the keys in their bowl. I turned off the lamp that makes a pool and watched the room hold the dusk without drama. My life is not a headline. It is a list that keeps being kept. Deed intact, past perfect. Account steady, boundaries intact, baby fed, soup cooling. I lock the door because that's what you do when what's inside is yours. Tomorrow we'll go to the market. If the roast is on sale, we'll buy two. And if it's not, we'll make something else. We're good at that now. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.